All right, let's take this discussion further now. We're joined on the line by SABC senior researcher Ronesh Dwaraj. Ronesh, a very good afternoon to you. Maybe let's talk to us about what led the ANC to this conundrum, especially since the elective conference. What do you think went wrong?
Yeah, it's been a very, very long and very rough road for the ANC, Alicia. And good afternoon to all your viewers on Channel 404. Obviously, to retrace our steps, we have to go back to Polokwane, where Jacob Zuma was elected as ANC president. He served as ANC president between 2007 and 2017. But I really think the ANC's problems that we are seeing now, that are manifesting now, actually started as early as 2012. Let me take you back to 2007, the Polokwane National Conference. You would recall that Thabo Mbeki was seeking a third term as ANC president. Obviously, he lost that race. He lost that race to Jacob Zuma, and he lost that vote by a 60-40 ratio. So although Jacob Zuma won in Polokwane, he had a very slim margin to actually, have control of the party for the next 5 years. Here we're talking about the National Executive Committee, the NEC, and the National Working Committee, the NWC. But I think really the turning point came back 5 years later, when in 2012 the ANC's top six was voted in with a huge majority, and here Jacob Zuma actually cemented his hold of the ANC with around 75%. I remember that year Gwede Mantashe, the incumbent Secretary General of the ANC, won the most number of votes of delegates. He won by 77%. So once he had control of the ANC in 2012 at Mangaung, remember also Mangaung celebrated 100 years of the ANC. So Jacob Zuma, as party president, as the incumbent, brought in the ANC and saw the ANC into 100 years of existence. So I think that really was a turning point, and people were really revved up. They were geared up. ANC delegates were all gung-ho for the incumbent ANC leadership, and that's why they got the amount of support that they did in December 2012.
Yeah.
And once Jacob Zuma got a hold of the ANC, he cemented his hold of the ANC. His people also cemented their grip of the National Executive Committee. Remember, they are the highest decision-making body between conferences. He also had his people within the National Working Committee, which is a substructure of the NEC, to actually do all the practical work on at ground level. So I think those problems, the problems that we are seeing now that are manifesting within the ANC and the leadership squabbles that we are seeing post-NASREC December 2017 can actually be traced back to December 2007 in Polokwane, Limpopo.
All right, look, Ronesh, maybe going back a little bit now, I've been trying to find clarity on this issue the whole afternoon. What are some of the differences or similarities that you can actually draw between what's happening to former President Thabo Mbeki, the way that he was recalled, and the situation with President Jacob Zuma? What are some of the conditions that could be the difference pertaining to the different deals that are being staged? The other one was able to bow out without making much noise.
I think it's very important to actually trace back to history once again, Alicia. Going back to Polokwane, we saw what happened. We had a conundrum of the two centers of power. We had Jacob Zuma as ANC president. We had Thabo Mbeki, who was the South African president. But I think the motivating factor in Thabo Mbeki's recall was the Chris Nicholson judgment in the Pietermaritzburg High Court, which alleged that there was political interference by the then sitting president Thabo Mbeki in the NPA corruption case of the ANC president at the time, Jacob Zuma. So that kind of snowballed into a massive movement. We had people on the side of Jacob Zuma. Jacob Zuma was the so-called victim in this alleged conspiracy by Thabo Mbeki and his people. A huge plus for Jacob Zuma at the time was he had the support of the ANC Youth League. That time was led by Julius Malema, who made a lot of noise, but very importantly, he also had the support, the groundswell support of the alliance partners of COSATU, of the South African Communist Party. And if you can take your minds back to the Pietermaritzburg High Court back in September 2008, you would see, there was like a sort of a mini rally by the alliance partners in support of the so-called political victim in the guise of Jacob Zuma. So all of that noise actually culminated in that recall, that fateful recall of Thabo Mbeki. But But, being Thabo Mbeki, he is a constitutionalist. He very willingly said, I will resign my position. The ANC has spoken. I have served the ANC for 52 years. My father was a very prominent member of the ANC. My family's always been part of the ANC. Of the ANC leadership. So he willingly said, I will go, but I will follow the proper procedure. So what he did was he wrote to the Speaker of the National Assembly, because he was elected by the National Assembly, by a majority of the MPs in the National Assembly. Obviously, we know that the ANC has the majority in the National Assembly in Parliament. So his first step was to approach the Speaker of the National Assembly, Baleka Mbete, and he wrote to convey his resignation. And he eventually, in a televised cast to all South Africans, he resigned. I think it was September 21, and you would remember that he was due to travel to the UN General Assembly. So he was supposed, that was going to be his swan song, but he was denied that opportunity. I think forward wind exactly 10 years, it's a very, very different scenario. Obviously here we are talking about very different circumstances. We have a president, a sitting South African president, who is implicated in all sorts of wrongdoings, issues of state capture, issues of this state-owned entities. Here we're talking about SAA, the SABC, PRASA, Denel to a certain extent, very prominently Eskom as well. Then we had the Waterkloof landing by the Gupta family of that wedding guest a couple of years ago. So it's a whole litany of issues. And very importantly as well, we had a string of court cases that the current South African president is still to face. So this is kind of damaging the ANC's brand. It has damaged the ANC's brand if you look at the past elections, you look at what happened in 2014, but more importantly, if you look at how the ANC suffered in the 2016 local government elections. The ANC lost those 3 metros, 3 very strategic, 3 very symbolic and key metros, Johannesburg, Tshwane in Gauteng. Then we had Nelson Mandela Bay Metro in the Eastern Cape. The Democratic Alliance solidified its hold of Cape Town, winning close to a 2/3 majority in Cape Town, and also Ekurhuleni in Gauteng. The ANC was forced to go into a coalition with smaller parties like the African Independent Congress. So the ANC did suffer a lot of brand damage, and the party is attributing all of this to the brand called Jacob Zuma.
But I mean, with that in mind, then why does the party not relook their policies, which would in effect make it easier for them to deal with such matters as they arise, Ronesh? Because it seems like the party is being held captive by its very own policies that they cannot effect.
I think, Alicia, the ANC has to be absolutely careful, and that's the reason what we are seeing playing out is symptomatic of that. We've got a new leadership that was elected at Nasrec in Johannesburg a couple of months ago in December 2017. That leadership did not win that election by a huge majority. If you look at the top 6 leadership elections, Cyril Ramaphosa won that election by just a mere 179 votes compared to Dr. Dlamini Zuma, and then the remainder of the top 6, the vote split was very uneven. It was 50-51, 52-53, around that. So it wasn't a majority judgment leadership contest that one faction won over the other. And I think very, very importantly, Cyril Ramaphosa is treading very, very carefully. 2 factors that Cyril Ramaphosa and the incumbent NEC leadership needs to consider is, remember, Jacob Zuma represents a very powerful constituency for the ANC. Here I'm talking about KZN. Under Jacob Zuma's leadership as ANC president, you would also remember that the ANC managed to increase their paid-up membership from 340,000 in 2007 to a massive 950,000 10 years later in 2017. So Jacob Zuma in that sense represents a very, very powerful constituency. Also, very significant for Jacob Zuma is that the election results of KwaZulu-Natal, of this very strategic province, has always picked up or buoyed the election results of the ANC when other provinces suffered declines. For example, if you look at the ANC's election results between 1994 and 2014, only 2 provinces from the 9 provinces actually showed increases. The other one was Northern Cape, which marked an increase around 14%. But the key province for the ANC was KZN. The province of KZN increased their results between 94 and 2014 by a massive 34%. And that 34% was the actual figure that increased the results of the ANC all across the other provinces, because all the other provinces suffered declines. I think Western Cape, there was a very marginal decline of 0.4%. Yeah. So in that sense, the ANC leadership, the current ANC leadership, has to be very, very careful when it comes to Jacob Zuma, because as I said again, he represents a very, very powerful constituency.
Ronesh, you were just talking about noise earlier on, and of course, let me bring you up to date with the current news. Of course, the opposition parties, they're going out and giving the country now a new call for the dissolution of parliament immediately after President Jacob Zuma has been recalled into office, and essentially affecting Section 51 of the Constitution that could potentially put the Speaker of Parliament as the caretaker president until, of course, after 30 days. These lengthy processes, it just seems like we're not getting to the bottom of this issue.
Yeah, unfortunately, Alicia, that's how politics plays out, especially in this country. And I think we have a lot to thank the EFF for that, because remember, pre-2014, they were still part of the ANC, and obviously they broke away. 2013, July, they formed, and then all sorts of noises were being made in Parliament. And now we are seeing that the EFF, also the DA and other smaller parties, they are spearheading this process. And that proposed motion of no confidence was actually initiated by the Economic Freedom Fighters, led by the very controversial Julius Malema. So yes, very, very interesting political times. And I always tell my friends and colleagues, I'm actually thankful that we have this robustness and this gung-ho in our kind of politics, in South African politics, because now even little children are starting to watch what's happening in Parliament, whether it's a good thing, whether it's a bad thing, but people are glued to the television screens. And I think very, very, very significantly also, Alicia, we have to remember that the 2019 general elections is just a few months away. Yeah. The elections have to happen anytime between May and August next year. So that gives the different political parties very little room space to actually maneuver and actually do their election campaigning. But if they are calling for early elections, I think they might have a few problems with that. Obviously, a whole number of processes have to be fulfilled. But the other issue which I felt the analysts should have touched on earlier was the issue of the IEC. Just last week, the IEC came out with regard to the registration weekends that will be held in March. You would recall that back in June 2016, there was a Constitutional Court judgment advising the IEC to get their house in order by June 2018 this year. Yeah. And thus far, they've only got 75% of their database, subscribing to that judgment, where the IEC needs to keep records of all voter details and voter addresses, to actually have a credible election. So if these political parties are asking for the dissolution of Parliament and possible elections in the next 3 months, from where I'm sitting, that's not going to happen, because especially, before an election happens, the IEC needs to be consulted, because it's the IEC, the Electoral Commission, that actually conducts those elections. And until those addresses, we've just got 75% of those addresses captured on the database, until those processes are fulfilled, those elections will not be held. All
right, and just to close off, Ronesh, I'm not sure if you've heard about this rumored cabinet reshuffle should caretaker president be elected as Cyril Ramaphosa. And of course, a lot of people saying that if Ramaphosa, he does not want to risk taking, of course, this debate of a motion of no confidence to Parliament. He needs to resolve this issue at NEC level, because when it gets to the cabinet, those people that still support Zuma might be fearing for their jobs, and they might just make sure that that motion doesn't succeed.
I think Cyril Ramaphosa again has to do a very good, a very delicate balancing act. Obviously, if President Jacob Zuma is recalled from office, remember he is the one who is constitutionally mandated. He, by the South African Constitution, is allowed to appoint cabinet. Cabinet consists of the president, the deputy president, and all ministers. Yeah. And then we have the deputy ministers who form the national executive. So we all know that he has appointed people to certain ministries to, possibly, again, we are talking about so-called patronage networks. So those people, were put there for a possible reason. We don't know what those reasons are. So if Jacob Zuma is recommended to vacate the office of the office of the president, then obviously changes will be made, because there will be a new president coming, whether it's the acting president as the National Assembly Speaker, or whether it's Cyril Ramaphosa or any other person designated by the ANC's NEC. That person will want to work with people that will cooperate with them in getting delivery done from the side of government. And remember also, again, I go back to the 2019 elections. The 2019 elections marks 25 years of democracy. And we all know what's happening this year. We saw yesterday the launch of the Mandela 100 legacy. So the ANC wants to go on a very different trajectory. So to get their message correct and get their branding correct, the ANC wants to do certain things to ensure that those people who are disillusioned with the party will come back to the party and vote for the ANC in the 2019 general election. And that's just a couple of months away. So the ANC has a lot of brand damage to do between now and then. So if those cabinet reshuffles or those name changes do happen, I think it'll be with a bigger purpose and a bigger objective, looking towards the 2019 general elections. And the ANC does not want to lose power, firstly. And secondly, the ANC does not want to dip below the psychological 50% level, because that will mean coalition politics, moving from local election politics up to national and possibly provincial politics in this country.
Ronesh, always a pleasure. Thank you so much. As of course, we wait to hear the final outcome of those exit talks. And of course, we will be deliberating and delivering those as they come to us, as they become available to us live here on SABC News. For that, we take a quick break and we're back after that.